question me on why I made decisions I had to make because I had to stand firm on who I am. Like it's a more. That's why I grew my hair out. I'm first person in the door, last person out. But I'm like, y'all still questioning my degree because I went to HBCU.
Who knew? Dreams come true, y'all. This been the plan, this ain't nothing new. Shades and my money blue.
What's up, everybody? It's your boy L from the VibeHouse, and today we catching vibes on the road. We got a man of many hats in the building today. The boy Legendary the Poet, man.
Yo, peace, light, love, man. I appreciate you for having me. You know what I'm saying? Coming through. I know you was busy, on the road, and I appreciate you taking the time to stop through here and, allowing me to touch, catch some vibes with your people, with your audience, man. I appreciate that.
For sure. Glad to have you, bro. And we just gonna get straight into it, man. Like, from working for the government to deciding to walk away from that and becoming a full-time entrepreneur, how this been, bro?
Man, it's been a great experience, to be honest. And along the journey, you're gonna always hear a lot of positive. Well, if you're a positive person, you're gonna hear positive messages. And one of the things that even more recently helped me in taking another risk like that and having to make another decision where I bet on myself and continue to develop as an entrepreneur and stand more firmly on that. It's happening for us, not to us. And so along your journey, you're going to learn how to navigate. And when you know how to navigate life, you can go anywhere. And so it's really been a blessing. I genuinely appreciate the opportunities that I had, for the government, federal, state, local, all the opportunities that I had working, my education. Created a lot of opportunities for me, and I still utilize that information and that experience and those things that I learned from those relationships even. So it's all universal anyway. It's not like you move on over here and you don't look back to that toolbox that you developed. That's still part of who you are ultimately, and it's just the ability to be able to grow and have social mobility. That's what skill sets. That's as Moors. That's what we do. We travel the globe with our skills, and we barter.
For sure. And I heard you mention education, man. You currently working on your PhD at the Tuskegee University, man.
So,
let them know what you got going on and talk about your education and how many degrees you got, my dog.
So I currently have 3 degrees, and I'm working on my 4th degree. And they're all in agriculture in some way, shape, or form. So, like my degree from the University of Idaho is in science, technology, and management, fire ecology, and so that technology piece is important because in agriculture, that's one way that you look at how it transformed the agricultural industry was industrialization. Well, technology is a way of doing that. You can cover more ground and automate a lot more productivity when you utilize technology, especially and small farmers need that. Large farmers are using it, so small farmers need that. So understanding that education is key to elevating yourself. Your industry, you got to be in tune with your skills in your industry. So as more as again being merchants, it's important for us to be sharp with our tools. So education has really helped me with that. When I was at Auburn, I was really learning about policy, learning how like air property, which deals with interstate succession laws. So every state has, if a person dies without a legal will or a legal instrument or some legal way, like an estate plan, a trust, then the state has laws that determine how your assets are transferred to your descendants. And that may be the way you wanted it to be. That may not have been the way you wanted it to be. But those aren't things that are always taught in our communities. And so how property laws work. Some people think if you have a deed, as long as you got the deed with you, you own the property. It's not how it works. You know, the deed has to be recorded at the county courthouse, you know, within a time frame, with a certain time frame of the transaction. So I was just learning all of these different social economic factors that are associated with essentially land ownership and how our access to it would spun off into a whole lot of other things, you know, identity, you know, race, the economic wealth gap, racism, control, you know, social control. I mean, this is a whole, and then systematic, you know, social economic racism. So you learn about a lot of these things. You may grow up, you know, because you come from an urban community, a community of color, you know, you feel like, all right, I see these systems, but it's a whole other thing when you learn about them, you know, like using social theory on an elevated level. So it just elevated my mind, and then coming back in as a practitioner, say you're somebody who works for, you're a public servant, you need that information so that you can be a better public servant. Some people, they don't have the empathy for the communities that they have an oath of office to serve. So that education also allowed me to be a lot more open-minded in my approach to meeting the goals of these organizations to be a better public servant. So
Dope. And just staying on that education topic, man, I'm also aware that you taught at Tuskegee, man.
yeah.
So how is that, you know what I'm saying, going to being able to apply things you learn in life and then going back to a school like Tuskegee University and being able to impact those students?
I think that, you know, it's just a great opportunity. I think, you know, to whom much is given, much is expected. So a lot of times people in those positions have some way, shape, or form created an opportunity for us. And in creating those opportunities, I feel like it's really important to give back. And, you know, a lot of things I always talk to, you know, my students about is the experience. Like they were telling me this past week that they're appreciative of me because I'm able to talk about, you know, professional things in layman's terms so that it relates to them. And they were recently going through a training, and it wasn't that the training was bad. It's just that sometimes people aren't from your community, or even if they are from your community, they just may not know how to communicate in a way that the audience gets it. And so I'm not happy that they had that experience, but of course, I think it's good for them to understand the importance of effective communication. And that's one of the things I understand. So being able to connect with them and give them the real world experiences that I had from my career that I wouldn't have had if somebody didn't open up the door for me. So that's how I look at education. You know, it's so important for us as we learn, like a lot of times with, you know, those government jobs, especially when you working in rural areas, you can be the first person that someone who has ever seen that looks like you or who has the social orientation. Like it's important to be able to have somebody like myself connect with, you know, students of color as they go into these agricultural careers and professions, because a lot of times you are working in rural communities and you'll be the first person that is a person of color that someone, maybe like a white person, has seen in these areas. And then on top of that, it's a different social dynamic. You may not be what they consider, you know, the typical person of color from their area, because again, now you're a federal government or a government employee, and they think that comes with a certain, you know, social economic status, and it does. So that can be a rough cultural shock and adjustment for you, especially coming from an HBCU where you praise, people love you, and we celebrate our own culture and each other as a people. And then you go to this place, and so if you don't have somebody like me who can tell you, like, I've been through that, I understand, you know, I'm here to you just to listen, and if you want me to give you some suggestions on how to navigate that, here's how I did it, and then we can connect you with other people too who can help you with that. if you don't have that connection with somebody, it's tough to go through, you know. So.
Right. And the special thing about it, like, you know, I experienced that being in those small areas, and you will have a guy tell you, like, look, man, I came from a racist family, but I don't want to be like that, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And one thing I learned, like, you can teach people as long as you keep that open line of communication.
It's true. Yeah, I mean, you know, and mind you, you young. You know, it ain't like you 50, 60
Facts.
going through this. And, you know, it's tough. I mean,
That's what make it a shock. Like,
yeah.
I ain't used to this. Well, okay. This what we doing. We finna go hard then.
Yeah, we here. Like, it's front and center with it. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, you just got to, and, you know, you got to always stand tall. Like, you always got to stand, you know, with integrity. Like, that's why those moments are so important. I think that's what when you look back at the institutions that you are a part of, your family, your university, you know, if you know, maybe you have a spiritual practice or a religious practice that you have, you know, there are certain values, you know, that, and you like, yo, am I a representation of what I really stand for and everything that I'm doing? You should always be able to be assertive about who you are. And so, like, when people question me on why I made decisions I had to make, because I had to stand firm on who I am. Like, it's more. That's why I grew my hair out. I'm first person in the door, last person out. But I'm like, y'all still questioning my degree because I went to HBCU. You know, it's like I don't have to. Yeah, there's so much to do in the world, and I learned how to do that here. I use it as my training ground.